My name is Constanza Nieto. I'm sorry. I am Colombian, and I came to this country 15 years ago. And I had the opportunity in my country to create, to have several jobs, CTO, CIO, and all the C's that I learned here. We also have, I also had the opportunity to create a company to raise funding. In Latin America, it's not that easy. And I sold the company. And as a woman, I had maybe a couple of very difficult times in my time in Colombia, working in Colombia. I had the opportunity to be the vice president of the Social Security Institute, and I managed the largest budget in my country, and I was 26, and that is kind of hard. But the more difficult thing for me at that time was that my board of directors, of course, was 3 ministries and unions, people from unions, all guys, all men. And it really was a hard and difficult time for me to manage negotiations with them. And what I really did at that moment is I got a very good friend, of course a senior guy that helped me to manage every single one of my boards. Until we could really start the reform of the pension fund reform in Colombia, and that's why we now have the opportunity to get pensions in private funds instead of the social security. So that was one, and the other difficult experience in Colombia was when I started my company. I passed at least 6 months working from, I don't know, 6 a.m. in the morning until 2 a.m. in the morning. Really, my husband didn't see me for 6 months until we got that company. It was hard, and you have to really give away your family time for a while, but it's worth it. And now I think I can manage better my relationship with my kids thanks to that. So thank you.
Pass it on. Short question: how many of you are entrepreneurs? Wow, fabulous, very nice. Go ahead.
Hi, so Poornima Vijayashanker. My company is Femgineer. We're an education company, and this is one of my many startups. So my first startup was actually Mint.com, where I was the founding engineer, and I was there from the beginning until we got acquired, and then decided to strike out on my own. Originally started Femgineer as a blog about engineering and entrepreneurship, and then in the last 2 years have made it into an education company. We mostly do online education, and we do have a lot of men in our program. About 50% of them, of the students are men, a lot of international folks as well. I think the challenge that I have as a woman entrepreneur is people taking me seriously. I think people can take me seriously on a personal level, but they don't take my business seriously. And as a result, I've had to cultivate a very tough exterior, cut my hair, and also show them that what I'm doing I'm passionate about, and that there is a growth trajectory, and help them see the vision, but it has not been an easy journey. I do think it's a very worthwhile cause, which is why I continue to do it. But yeah, that's my challenge.
And what's the name of your company?
Femgineer.
It's very well known, at least I knew about it. How many of you know it?
Okay, well, I'll change that.
Exactly. We're going to convert everyone here. Very
Can you
good.
describe what that?
Oh, sure. I mean, it began as a personal brand. So I started it as a blog back in 2007 when I was working at Mint, and I needed a name, and I figured PoornimaVijayashanker.com was not going to be searchable. Maybe some folks in India would be able to find it, but the vast majority wouldn't. And I was just debating on what I wanted as a domain, and I thought, well, I'm going to write about engineering and entrepreneurship, and I'm female. There's not a lot of females, again, this was 2007, so let me think, okay, what about Femgineer? And that's how the name came about. Yeah.
Very nice. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I was born of Chinese immigrants who came to this country, and now I'm old. Talk about fast forward. I actually, bootstrapped. My parents were immigrants, and so we had a very tough time immigrating to this country and actually assimilating to American society. And so I had to work my way through college, pay for my own way, work full time, do all the things that women do to try and actually secure their place in the business world. At 27, I was selected to be a member of the executive senior staff at Stanford University. And so there were plenty of old guys, academics, that were in the main, what I call the main network. And it was because I had a mentor who was not only a scientist, but also a humanitarian. I worked at a research laboratory. It was an international laboratory. Worked for the founder and then worked for a Nobel laureate for 15 years. And then another director. And then, interesting enough, when the woman came on board, I left. And so we went through 4 particular directors, and I had the foresight of having Stanford University pay for my MBA. So when I retired, because I came to Stanford at such a young age, I was able to actually take an MBA with me and say to my sons, who were graduating with their undergraduate degree, Mom's going to go figure out what she wants to be when she grows up. And I ended up in the innovation space. Yeah, and ended up, and during the time that I was Stanford, I will tell you that I spent a lot of time pulling minorities and women along, getting them in the front door, side door, back door, however I could get them in, because it was really important for them to have Stanford University on their resume. And then subsequently I ended up in this innovation space, and now I do due diligence on startup companies getting ready for capitalization. And I do exactly the same thing for them that I did for the women and the minorities, and that is to help them figure out how to navigate through the capital system so that they can actually be successful when they are running their business.
My name is Kaylie. I have a film production company. It's a new company. It just started in November. We do documentary filmmaking. I think because it's so new, I've yet to find out what my biggest challenges are. So far, it is definitely having a toddler and trying to figure out the balance between my toddler and working on this project, which is requiring a lot of hours and a lot of time away from home. It's an investigative documentary on Yelp, so if any of you work there, I'd love to talk to you after this, since they won't agree to an interview. We're examining the claims by business owners of review manipulation, extortion, and fabrication. And anytime Yelp is questioned about their business tactics, they fall to 3 areas, which are the FTC closed an investigation, court cases against them have all been dismissed, and there was a Harvard business study that showed there was no evidence of wrongdoing. But there are huge, huge holes in all 3 of those, so we will be looking into that.
And I just want to add to it real quick. What Kaylie does is actually prototype of entrepreneurship, standing up to billion-dollar companies, don't worrying, just doing it. I think this is one of these. Well, no, it's not. Because whatever we do as an entrepreneur, it's always stupid in the beginning. So real quick, I started 5 companies. The first was totally stupid. It was against all odds, building a distribution organization that is very different than conventional trade and conventional distribution is actually working. $5 billion later, it worked actually out. Started 4 other companies, and it all had kind of difficulties. I mean, there were major, and I think it's almost regardless what it was, it's one of the situations that all of us face, and all of us meaning female and male, zero difference, is coming over some major roadblocks that typically others don't step over, because the only one does is the one person, again, doesn't matter by which kind of male or female, is who taking something to the next level. And my biggest challenge right now is I started an accelerator about a year ago, and we decided a mission. We want to help more startups and more entrepreneurs be successful than any time else before was even imaginable. And we have these bold number of 100,000 startups we want to help, and probably down the road between 1 and 5 million. And the biggest challenge is I have no idea today how I can actually scale this, or how whoever helps me, can scale this. Because scalability in our case is the biggest problem. And scalability for building out entrepreneurship is a huge dilemma, because even we don't know what is a very clear profile of an entrepreneur. And so Marita and I discussing this often at night, and we said, she said, okay, so I have this female entrepreneur, so what do you think about, this behavior or these situations? And we came to the conclusion that, there is no behavioral pattern between super successful entrepreneurs. The only pattern that I could find so far is that they were different than anybody else. And so the one conclusion we came up with is that as soon as some person tries to emulate somebody else, particularly on the gender side, fails right immediately. And so one of the things I would actually love to talk to you, you said you have the issue about, not be taken serious.
I'm sorry, who's moderating the panel? Excuse me? That ain't gonna happen. No.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, but maybe later. Thank you. That was a classic example, I have to tell you. Had I been a millennial, I would not have spoken up. But A, I'm older, B, I'm from Germany, so I will speak up. But thank you. We did not agree on that ahead of time, but we could have. Exactly. So I wanted to give you some background about myself as well. I work with startups. I'm a mentor at 500 startups. I do a lot of pitch training with Spaniards and Israelis. I was just trying to think, German and French, no. Brazilians, so only with foreigners, with internationals. I'm also part of the SV Latin Fund, Silicon Valley Latin American Fund, where my partner has raised 4 million and needs to raise more, and I'm the entrepreneur evangelist, and I do the deal flow, the pipeline, and she does the harder mathematical part, where I speak 5 languages, so I only have half a brain. The other side is, the mathematical side is a little more muted. But so I've also had a lot of these. We see these challenges now more for us as women in Mexico. Trying to raise, why would they give, a couple $1 million to a couple of women? So that's kind of where it is in that one. So let me ask you the first question. In Silicon Valley, the percentage of women starting technology companies is very low, at a rate of around 3%. Now, some of these numbers that I saw on the internet could have been from 2013, 2014. It may have gone up, but it doesn't make a difference. Of privately held companies, only 6.5% have a female CEO and 1.3% a female founder. Why are the numbers so low, and what 3 challenges do you see women facing who are creating a high-tech startup? And not everyone is going to answer. It's kind of, who feels that, you probably would.
Sure. I think one of the biggest myths is that, and mind you, I am technical. I have 2 degrees. I have electrical engineering and computer science. But I think one of the biggest myths that a lot of women feel is that they don't have a technical degree, and that they need to have a technical degree in order to start a high-tech company. But if you look at the history of Silicon Valley, even as recently as 5 years ago, there have been a number of billionaires and so on who have come about who never took a single programming class, probably couldn't, tell you how to do physics or anything like that.
But they have a brilliant co-founder who can do
Exactly. And so, I think some of you know the classic example I'm talking about. But I think what it speaks to is, one, the imposter syndrome, like once they get on there and they try to ask for capital, someone is going to say, well, you don't have a degree, or you don't understand this technology, etc. So there's a lot of that. And then I think so there's one, just the technical education, and that kind of stems down further into a lot of women not joining technical schools and graduating, etc. I think the second challenge is also the type of mentorship that's offered. It's only, I think, in the last, since 2010, that I felt there was enough mentorship present for women. Prior to that, there wasn't a lot, and you had to, try to knock on people's doors as much as possible. And while, I'll say there were definitely a lot of men who volunteered to coach me and coach other women I know, I think the challenge still remained that a lot of the mentorship that they were seeking was around what you were talking about, this balance of life, motherhood, high-tech career, and all this stuff, and they were just like, tell you, like, my wife is at home taking care of the kids, or or she took a back seat, or there's all these stories, right? So I think there was a lot of dialogue missing that women in particular are looking for, and I think the challenge is they're grappling between this sort of traditional identity that society has cultivated, and then this other thing being their dream, and it's hard to reconcile. But those are just two. I don't want to take up the whole time.
I think Constanza wanted to say something. Thank you.
I think the problem is also the stereotypes. We create a stereotype that working in technology needs to be a geek, very working 24/7 or something like that, and really nobody wants that kind of life. I think, at least I don't want that. But I think that we need to change that. We need to change the stereotype that working in technology needs to be that terrible, and we need to do something like a movie or something with something really attractive for technology, because technology is also, in my opinion, technology is one of the careers more flexible. You can work and code from home, and now that we have internet, in my time I had to go to the office, but now you can really, I think, more flexible career than technology. So we need to create some kind of sexy movie or something that attracts women to technology. Is really the best, I think, the best career for women.
I've sort of watched the evolution of technology emerge from Silicon Valley, even before it was Silicon Valley and it was still flower growers in the valley. And one of the things that we've noticed at Stanford University was that there was an absence of a critical mass of women coming into the science and technology. It's taken us almost half a generation to actually bring women into the mix in terms of graduating with technical degrees. I think we're sort of sitting at about 40%, which is quite high. And then the other side of it also is the whole notion of entrepreneurship, being not only your own boss, but then actually being responsible for others and their paychecks. That is very intimidating to a lot of people generally, and certainly to women specifically. I think most of us are used to feeding our families and making sure there's food on the table, not just going to get the money to put food on the table, also preparing it in some respects. And so the certainty of a paycheck certainly has discouraged a lot of women from going into entrepreneurship as a consequence. But I am a firm believer that likes do attract. I mean, if you look at the, it wasn't that long ago, 20 years ago, when we asked who in the room was an entrepreneur, there would be 1 or 2 hands that would go up. And so we are getting to that point where we are starting to create a critical mass of people not only choosing science and technology, but actually going into entrepreneurship. One of the areas that I'm noticing rapid increase in technology is the life science and medical device area.
No. I don't want everyone always, answering all the questions. Does anyone from the audience have a question? Or are you not stimulated, motivated yet too? All right, we will get to that. Please, jump in. Did you? Go ahead.
I would just point out, and I don't know how you would react to this, particularly Kaylie, but Steve Blank, the ultimate Silicon Valley guru, had looked at this recently, and he had been in New York giving a whole series of presentations, and found that the number of entrepreneurs getting funded in New York City was well over 50% women. And he was struggling to find out why, and what they came across was that most of, or many of the startups in New York City, as opposed to Silicon Valley, were in entertainment,
fashion,
financial,
exactly, fintech,
fashion, media, and women had a long life of experience within the industries out of which they grew their interest in being entrepreneurs in those industries, and the good ones got funded easily.
Interesting.
And I thought I looked differently at Silicon Valley after that, because we are maybe almost a two-industry area, investment and tech, and well, medical as well. Sorry.
You had a point? Thank you, Robert.
I kind of wanted to piggyback on what she was saying, and also what Axel was saying in regards to what is that picture of the entrepreneur. And I'm just speaking on myself because I've had my own TV show produced for 14 years. And nobody on the panel talked about passion and belief. And I truly feel if one has a passion and a belief and a vision, and you keep striving for it, despite all odds, because when you have that passion, nothing's going to hold you back. Because obstacles always come up when you're on your path to success or to reach your goal. And I think that persistent determination to reach that goal and accomplish your passion and what you believe in life, it becomes more than just a business or a startup company. It's your passion, it's your dream, it's your goal. And for me, I feel that is an entrepreneur.
But I've seen a lot of women who are very passionate get knocked down, not get funded, not get accepted, get treated. Unfortunately, we may want to believe and be passionate. I think everyone here is passionate. I'm sure you all are. I don't see that helping, and I've seen a lot of people.
But don't you see also guys not getting...
Absolutely, absolutely. That's not a women's issue.
That's not a women's issue.
Yeah. So you're totally right. Go ahead.
I'd love to hear more from Kaylie, who's recently gone through the process of trying to raise money for a tech, or is it, oh, I'm sorry. Are you?
Poornima?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, sorry. Yeah, I'd love to hear more since you've recently gone through the process of, raising money for a tech company.
Yeah.
And, what words of wisdom you have, recommendations.
Well, but you didn't raise money for Mint.
I didn't, but I did, exactly.
And
I did raise money for my second startup, BizeeBee.
Exactly.
I think raising money is hard, and it is harder for some than for others. And by that I mean, I've seen some, I've also coached a lot of people into raising capital and who have raised, twice, thrice as much as I have. And I think the challenge in raising capital is always getting the other side to believe in you, and having to have that belief almost be unshakable. And sometimes that's hard because, like the woman in the back mentioned, no matter how passionate you are about your business and your top whatever it is you're doing, if they don't believe that you can do it, then they're not going to give you money. If they don't fundamentally believe that you are capable, and sometimes even they believe you're capable, but then they think things like, one VC I back-channeled a comment said, oh, I don't think she's capable of running a 200-person company. And I thought that was kind of funny because I'm not going to run a 200% company overnight.
Yeah.
And who knows what will happen on the way there. You know, maybe I'm not capable and I have the foresight to step down and let someone else run it. But I thought it was kind of funny to have that kind of assumption rather than a dialogue. And so I think there are some challenges when it comes to the way people are going to perceive you in that process. And there's one surefire way to get capital, which is to not need it, right? And so by that I mean it's to build your business to a certain point where people are more interested in you, to get to the run rate where you have press, where you have customers, and people are coming to you. But I think too often people rely on capital in order to, inject their business and catapult it, rather than figuring out how am I going to make money from day one. So actually when I started Femgineer, I didn't take any outside capital. I quickly thought about how to offer a premium product so that I could pay myself, I could pay my employees, etc. And I've been running it very lean for the last 2 years, and just the thought of going out fundraising, I know I'll probably do it in the near future, but the thought of doing it right now, I just kind of cringe at having to do that sort of dog and pony show. But I think part of it is, again, getting the coaching, getting in front of people who believe in you and your space, and if they don't, then moving on. I think that's the challenge a lot of people have, is they don't move on from a no. Yeah.
Let me ask Axel as a man. So so I've gone to a lot of panels, and it's all really nice and flowerful, a lot of blah blah, and we all feel good when we leave. But I'd really like some real steps. What should women do so that that VCs believe in them, that they will get that money? What are they doing wrong, in quotation marks? What do you do so VCs believe you?
I think the number one thing is a lot of times, the most black and white is they don't have a high growth business. A lot of times they go and approach, so that's kind of the first, is like they don't really have a vision for how this is going to scale to $1 million, 100 million.
Scalability is a big point.
Right, so that's kind of the first black and white. The second is, what do they need? And by need, I mean actually being honest and saying like, hey, I need these C-level positions.
Being able to ask for something.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
And to some point also negotiate. I think it's always funny when I'll see women entrepreneurs who will always lowball their products, or they'll undervalue them when it's really worth a lot more because they're just afraid to ask. And the same thing translates to like female engineers asking for 10, 20K bonuses or raises, etc. So it's about getting in there and understanding your value and holding them accountable and saying like, hey, I want this money, here's how I'm going to use it, here's what I need from you to make that happen. I need you to introduce me, I need partnerships and this and that. But laying out more of a roadmap. And it happens for men behind closed doors because they can go and have beers and they'll talk about all these things, but it'll be very casual, right? So they're saying the same thing, it's just packaged in a different way.
Axel?
Yeah, so, fundraising is an interesting topic in general. So when you go to Germany, Germans, female or male, tell you it's much better in the US because you get more money and better money there. If you go to Russia, they say you at least go to Europe before you go to San Francisco and so forth. So I started to look at the probability of getting more money here versus anywhere else and vice versa.
But women?
Actually, no. It's, you know what? When an investor invests cash that they earn somehow, hopefully, and pay tax for, they invest this in the best opportunity. They never give a shit, so to speak, of whether this is a female or this is a male. They don't care. And you may trust me or not, doesn't matter. That's one of the process.
I think it's true on the angel level, but I'm not sure I would agree on the VC level.
Actually, on the VC level, even more. I think don't we have a VC, female VC here?
One of the things I want to comment on to your question specifically.
Shirley, did you need that? You just have to really talk into it or it doesn't work. Thanks.
I work with investors, and so I come at entrepreneurs from the investor's perspective. And when I do due diligence on companies and put them through their paces, it's with the investors in mind. So what I'm trying to do is create the best opportunity for the entrepreneur to be able to successfully go and make a presentation and be able to actually get funded. One of the things that I think is really important to understand is the capital ecosystem that you're in. And women have just as much opportunity to make an argument for their product as anybody else. The investment opportunity is what the investors are looking for. And he's absolutely right when he says that, you know, you could be out there selling a pet rock, but if you could place it in the marketplace and make them money and get a good ROI out of it, they will invest. But women sometimes don't have that kind of confidence. And it's as much mechanics as it is the fact that, you know, you're a woman. The woman in the corner there was talking about passion. That is absolutely correct. That passion has to come through, because as an entrepreneur, you're going to have to solve lots and lots of problems as you execute your business plan. And they have to know that at 2 o'clock in the morning, when you're on your last $1,000, that you're still going to get up and go do what you've got to do to execute. And that comes from the ability to persuade that investor that you, in fact, are very passionate. Now, the mechanics. What are the mechanics? There are very specific things that you have to pay attention to. And, you know, we can get into how you triage that. Because if you have limited resources, you have to figure out, what do I do first, second, and third? Because I only have so much money, it's only going to take me so far. But I think one of the most important critical things that you have to do as an entrepreneur is you have to be able to envision your entire capital runway, which means you have to know what you need when. And then you have to move towards that and then actually anticipate when you're going to run out of money and then be able to go out there and raise additional money. People that are people that just start need to start thinking about going to your angels. And now, one of the things that we discovered in the ecosystem, the capital ecosystem, is that last recession that we had, 60% of the VCs that were playing really loose with investor money, they left the landscape. So what was left were VCs that were, in fact, following the fundamentals, were actually investing in things that really they could touch, see, or smell. Okay, they're still operating. Now, capital is now loosening up and it's coming back into the capital system again. And so there's lots of money right now that's floating around, and they're looking for a place to land. And they also are looking for winners, obviously. And we have different tiers now. Whereas before you only had one kind of VC, a shark. But now we have different tiers of VCs. We have first tier, second tier, third tier. We have first tiers that can actually loan, between, I'd say probably about $1 million to about, $5 million even, that are operating in the angel space. And there's overlaps now. And so you have much more access than you used to before. So I think it's really important to understand the entire capital system. We also have, interesting enough, we have women VCs now playing in this space. And what they're doing is they're actually combining, interestingly, what we call double and triple bottom line. So it's not just the ROI they're looking for, they're also looking at whether or not your company is going to make a social impact somewhere. Mm-hmm. Are you creating jobs? Are you saving lives? Are you bringing sanitation to third countries? There are actually VCs out there that specialize in those kinds of businesses. So there's lots to be had, and it's just a matter of knowing where to go and where to best present yourself. And there's a way to present, and that again is back to mechanics.
That's a very good answer. Thank you.
Just if I can add one more thing, and you talked about it. I think the most critical suggestion that I would make is look for mentors, not just one, but 2 or 3, and take these guys seriously. And if you don't, then just replace them. But
no, but the problem is they have to take you seriously. You know, you say that so easily. You know how many young women I know working at Facebook or Google were desperately looking for a mentor because the young man that starts at the same time they do, he gets promoted. You know, he's the golden child, can do no wrong. And they as women continue. And I'm serious, I only know it from those companies. And they try to get mentors. It's hard to get a mentor.
Yeah, but not only for women. It's hard for everybody getting mentored. We had a meeting.
I don't agree with you. I think it's much harder for women. Absolutely. That's what I've seen.
One thing I will say,
Angelika, please. I mean, we have.
But I work with startups. I work with them for as long as you have. I see them at 500 startups. I see them with my daughter. I see them at Facebook. I see them all over. Women have a harder time.
One of the problems is a lot of times women are looking.
Disagree to disagree.
I think one of the problems is that women are looking for a very particular person to be their mentor.
Yes.
Right?
There we go.
And so as I actually have never had a woman mentor in my entire 10, 11-year career. It's always been men, but that's actually been a good thing because I need to side with men, and they're the decision makers in a lot of the situations I'm in. And so it's been helpful. I've probably had a couple of women who have mentored me along the way, but in terms of serious mentors, they've always been men. And the other thing is, it hasn't been this 10-year relationship. It's been, like you said, 6 months, 12 months, a couple years. And what that means is you are not necessarily throwing them away. It's just people get busy, or they can only help you to a certain point in your career or in your business, and you need to find somebody who can help you at the next level.
But the good news is that we're bringing more and more women into the investment capital space, and I think that's really critical. Because I know I work with 200 investors locally all the time. And maybe we only still represent about 10, 15% of the investor group. But you know what? We're going to outlast the men. I mean, we're going to live longer.
Right on.
We're going to end up with better estates, right? Our 401s are going to be big and chunky, and we're going to be looking for equity investments too. And I'm educating a lot of women to be investors, to be equity investors. And the more we have, the more we can actually moderate the conversation. Because I know that I sit in these investor meetings, and we'll have some man that's just like poo-pooing a particular, product or something. We call it kill the baby in its crib, And no, it really is serious. I mean, they will choke that entrepreneur, into extinction by starving them of capital. And they could just do it simply by just making one comment. And then it contaminates and poisons the entire capital well. And so you need women in that room who are going to say, well, wait a minute, this is a startup. Of course they don't have revenue runway yet. That's why they're called a startup. So you need to have sort of people in that room that sort of can help to moderate that. And you have to have women that are forceful, so that you can counteract some of these men, quite frankly, some of which aren't particularly bright investors themselves, to sort of moderate that conversation to make sure that you have the best opportunity, to get heard and to have your product reviewed, along with the others as well. I constantly am saving women, from extinction.
But there should be many of you. You seem to be a wonderful person and help mentor for women.
I'm worth 10 people.
I was going to say, at least. I know. I agree.
I have a question. Your female VCs, are they focusing on female entrepreneurs, or so if you see the percentage?
They're looking at opportunities.
Yeah,
it's about, money is green.
Yeah.
It has no gender.
Okay.
Okay. So it's really important. And I think it's really important for women to sort of, there is a certain exceptionalism. When you become an entrepreneur, by definition, you are exceptional. I mean, you have to believe in that. And women in particular are acculturated to be expert CEOs. Mainly because CEOs, what do they have to do primarily, functionally? They have to multitask, right? And women are superb at multitasking. Men, by comparison, and I learned this at Stanford University, is that men are very linear in their thinking. It's one task after the other. Move that football to that goal line. Get that touchdown. 1 yard at a time, but very linear. Women will get there slower, but they will get it there the right way, and they fuse into that progress, all of the things that they need to pay attention to, from user experience to capital needs to product development schedule to all the marketing, sales, they've got that all figured out as they're moving that football down. And it's really important for women to understand their own exceptionalism, that if you're going to come into this space, by definition, you're an exception.
Very good.
I disagree. I disagree. I don't think that women are multitasking. I am absolutely linear, and I have worked with many men that multitask. all the time, especially my son. I don't really think that we need to create those stereotypes, and the world is compounded by women and men, so we need both in the same. What is really great, I think, is to have the diversity in the companies and diversity to create innovation, to create things. That is the principle of innovation, having diversity and different minds creating something new. We cannot, in my opinion, we cannot create only women companies, only men companies, because it's not going to work. We need to have both.
That wasn't the point. The point is really women do have a harder time, and especially in Silicon Valley, than young men.
That may be true, but you cannot create stereotypes that women are like this and
well,
men
you
are
know,
like this.
let me qualify it, okay? It
And
has
I
been,
love it when people do
it
this.
has been my observation
Can you hear in the back without
more
the microphone?
men tend to be that way, and it's not because it's not a dig on them, you know, because there is a place for that, to be efficient and to be linear in your thinking. Okay, there's a place for that, and it's been my observation that they tend to do that. I mean, I've been in a you know, I've worked with Nobel Prize winners, I've been in an academic community, we get international, you know, people that come into the institution all the time. It's been my own personal observation. However, I'm raising a generation. Your son may be, let's say, a little bit different from the acculturation here because he has a strong woman that actually is raising him. My son are not like my ex-husband. Okay? They're going to be able to multitask, and this generation is different. They're much more open to diversity. They're much more open to team, collaborative, you know, sort of enterprises. And I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, at Stanford that I always emphasize, because I did pre-litigation investigation, specifically on institutional racism and institutional sexism. That was what I did for a living for a long time. And one of the things that I always found really interesting was that the scientists kept getting the same output every year, after year, after year. And why was that? It was because their team was very monolithic. They came from the same Ivy League schools. They thought the same way. They approached science the same way. They approached research the same way. And it wasn't until they actually made a conscious effort to bring diversity in, not just on gender and ethnic, but diversity in just experience. You know, bringing somebody from the University of Arizona or Colorado, somebody who came from the coal mines as opposed to, you know, being privileged. It was when they did that that they actually got different outcomes. Why? It's because when you have diversity, you have many more solutions. You're not stuck with just the monolithic. And so one of the things that I've tried to emphasize during my tenure over at Stanford was to say, garbage in, garbage out. If you want a better outcome than you got last year, you better change out the team and bring some diversity consciously into the mix, because otherwise you're going to end up with the same end product. That is something that the researchers understood. Okay, that whole idea of variables, you know, the need for variation so that you can get a different output. And that's how you need to talk to people, you know, to talk about something in a way that's quantitative that people understand. Like when you are trying to get money, you have to talk money. You have to talk in green. You can't talk in, you know, some of these sort of ways that we're sort of kind of acculturated to sort of talk. You got to talk money. You have to be able to build out that capital runway for them, explain to them when you're going to be exiting, explain to them when you're going to get to IPO, what's the time frame for that, why your product, is it a Me Too product, is it not Me Too product. All those things are speaking to those people who are actually going to take a risk and put money in your company. And that's something that, you know, I think, you know, if you learn anything, speak money.
Okay, Kaylie, your turn too. One thing I wanted to know, we always hear these things of, you know, Marissa Meyer and children, she built a nursery next door. I think Sheryl Sandberg, I think these women are fabulous. I'm not trying to put them down at all. Sheryl Sandberg's husband stays at home. So it's easy, you know, for her to raise the children. Besides, she's an incredible woman and has great salaries, etc. What is it like? I'm sorry?
Are you doing Survey Monkey?
Yeah. Still, but yeah, okay, they have probably 3 nannies and 5, God knows what. But he does stay home. One of them stays. Yes, whatever. I was just gonna say, don't knock them, but we can't all be that way. So you have a young child. What are the problems nowadays with being an entrepreneur and having children?
Well, at the stage that I'm at, you know, we just finished fundraising for the film. So at this point, I'm not taking a salary, which means I feel responsible to stay with my son while my husband is able to go to work, and because we need somebody to bring home a salary. But it also means that it takes away a lot of time from me being able to focus on the things I need to focus on. And I have so much going on and so much I'm trying to organize and getting interviews lined up and flights lined up and making sure that, you know, doing fact checking and just all kinds of stuff. There's so much to do and so many people on the East Coast I need to speak with, which means I have to balance the time of, I have to make sure everything is scheduled so that when my son is napping I can get things done, and does that work with the East Coast scheduling, and so that part is very hard, justifying paying for childcare when I'm not bringing the paycheck in yet.
So I have to say, I wrote my Ph.D. thesis while moving at Stanford, while moving internationally 3 times. And God, I went on stage with both my children when I got the Ph.D. You know, started from the beginning to the end. And then I had male friends, especially in Germany, quit McKinsey, it was too much. Had to get an extra apartment away from his wife downtown so he could focus and concentrate. It was amazing. I think he did do it, but I think still we women and being able to work, you work when they nap. Yeah. I mean, you really take every hour. Or I worked at night, played my children during the day, and wrote at night.
Or
so,
I figure out, okay, I really have to take this certain phone call, so we're going to be at the park, and hopefully he's not stealing a shovel. And
the others don't. Stephanie had a question.
So, but the fundraising for a project like yours, which obviously...
It's not a project, it's a startup, right? I'm sorry, the reason I said that is I work with Spanish entrepreneurs, and they would say, mi proyecto es. And instead of saying my startup is, I'm sorry, Stephanie, didn't mean to get down on you. They would say my project is. But I think in order to be taken seriously, if you call it your project, who's going to take you seriously as an investor?
Well,
I think it should be
I'm from the film industry, so we call films film projects.
Got it.
At least used to.
Got it.
I don't know how. And nowadays it was not offensive. It's just
I've been referring to it as right. Money was going to the project instead of the company.
Right, but the fundraising for a project that is not primarily focused on profit in the end, but also has a very high social value connected to it. And I'm not saying there's not tons of startups out there with the same idea, but for a documentary film project, it's kind of the premier kind of value, or usually the driving passion, as she said. You know, we were talking about that passion behind it. So the fundraising process is. Do you feel it's different? What are your thoughts about that? Do you have to deal with different kind of people? I mean, film producers who would give money to in order to co-produce your movie.
Well, we raised our funds on Kickstarter.
Oh, you do? Okay, so that's interesting.
Oh, how wonderful!
And
how much did you want, and how long did it take you to get there?
Well, my initial goal was 60,000 in 35 days, and we had that in less than 2 weeks.
Wow.
But I also kind of knew that the people that were going to want to contribute to the film were people that had a bone to pick with y'all.
Doesn't matter. Money is money, as Shirley says. Green is green.
And we did get up to 90 on Kickstarter, but there are a lot of people who are contributing directly to the production company because despite the fact that I said your donations can remain anonymous, they were still concerned and said we wanted to. I received cashier's checks and all kinds of things to make sure that their names remain anonymous throughout the process.
What do you give in return?
a film.
Yeah, like technically,
So-
do they get like a DVD at some
Yeah,
point?
it depends on the price point that they
Right.
contributed at, but yeah, there was like a DVD, a downloadable copy, a streaming
Right.
copy, a T-shirt,
Mentioning the
tickets
type
to.
Usually
credits.
Kickstarter.
Probably not so much in that case.
Well, there are a lot of people who are going by Anonymous in Seattle, or things like that. But yeah, we thank yous in the film. Whatever we could do on
Invitation to
achieve
the
that.
premiere.
Yes, yeah.
I think that in this case, maybe justified not to have salary, but I advise a lot of startups. And when you ask for funding, they must include your salary because you deserve it. You are working, and even if it's 3 hours or 6 hours, you need to have a salary. And that is something that I think women are different than men in general. Because they have a man working at home, they don't deserve salary, and that is not true. It's working time, and you deserve a salary. So if you are making a business plan, you need to have salary for you, salary for all your employees, and it doesn't matter that your husband is getting a good salary as well. So I know that in your case you have a non-profit program that is different, or project, or a startup, but it's different. But I advise all my startups that they need to include their salary at normal salaries that everybody has. Why?
Kaylie, you don't run your as a nonprofit.
No.
Exactly. So she's also for a profit.
Which I do agree with. I would love to take a salary, but at this point, we have to, I mean, even 100,000 for a film is such an incredibly small budget. We have to
No, I know
bootstrap.
that your case is a little different, but in general, you cannot miss it.
I'm sorry, there was some hands.
I was just going to suggest, did you actually incorporate childcare costs into your budget when you were, well, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Wait, go ahead.
So I think in terms of children, that's also really I think there's a shift needed, because I mean, before we came along as modern women, for thousands and thousands of years, women always had their children with them and they went to work. So it's just that type of work was so different, they had to go to the fields or whatever, make pottery, whatever it is, But they figured out how to do this, and they had a lot more children, and they birthed them all without any medical assistance, And so if I compare this, it's a lot harder. So I took this little experiment, and with my third child, I basically took him anywhere I went. So I refused to basically do this whole childcare back and forth and something. I just decided he has to go wherever I go. So I had
And what kind of work were you doing?
I'm a user experience designer and do design strategy for companies.
Okay.
So I had him in meetings with Microsoft. I had him in meetings with Intuit. So and I was really just I just basically walked in there, and it wasn't even a question. So when they were infants, I had them in a sling or something like this, so they felt comfortable.
But you did not whip out a boob and...
No, I wouldn't.
That's where it stopped? Okay.
That's the next.
Hey,
That's the next.
Hey, I think so. That's your generation. That's yours. And,
But the surprising part
very
was
good.
really by insisting on this and making this a normal event, it was really surprising how people reacted, and they actually were really positive about it, because a lot of them were parents too, and they had their little children someplace and missed their babies or something,
Oh, nice.
And it worked. So I can do this. It was really hard and exhausting at times. And at some point I preferred working with startups versus with big corporations. But it was possible, so you can totally do this. And I do think if we insist more on us being women and having women issues, for example, children. So I think we can do this.
Yeah.
I think we need to also educate our husbands.
Or wives, or no, nowadays it's not just husbands anymore.
Okay,
it's everything.
our partners.
Our partners.
Because I am very lucky, my husband is here, but when I had my first baby, I had to travel a lot, and my baby was 1 month old. But because my husband learned how to take care of everything, because I reject my mother and my mother-in-law, please don't come, I need to learn how to manage this baby with my husband. So my husband learned at the same time with me, so we both really create a relationship with the kid. So every time I have to travel, he took care of the kid. It was not only my job, and sometimes I have meetings and he took care, but was the way that we manage the relationship. Is the kids are not my responsibility only. So I did that, and it worked very well. I am very lucky, really.
I think
but
you are.
but
I also think she did it right. But I also think she has the right attitude. You had the right attitude. No, you really had the right attitude. There's someone in the back. Go ahead.
So I'm Simone. I'm an attorney. I'm very busy. I have 2 children, and my husband has the main child care responsibilities. We have switched roles. He's a teacher. He reduces hours to 80%. And he's there for the kids. He's there now. He's there all the time. I travel. He takes care of the kids. I don't have to worry about it. And I think that women don't have to be the caretakers. It can be our choice, and I love being with my kids when I'm with my kids. But it shouldn't be our job. I mean, we can never break free. We can never be the entrepreneurs. We can never pursue our careers 200% if we also, I mean, good for you that you could bring your child to wherever you went, but I can't do that. I'm an attorney, I do litigation, the court would throw me out if I did that. It's not accepted. But I never felt that it's my job. I felt we both made a conscious choice to have children, so whoever has the job that's more demanding is not responsible for that, and the other person is, and that's.
Well, is it more demanding, or is it earning? So my husband was earning, I mean, over 600,000 at the time, and I was earning piddly. If he had stayed at home, I mean, we would have had a totally different lifestyle. This is a long time ago. But I mean, sometimes you really don't have a choice. I would have loved. He said, I worked at McKinsey, or he worked at Porsche, he worked at whatever. He had to go. There was no choice. So if I had left too, my children would have been. No, yeah, that's true. But the other choice would have been my children would have been raised by strangers, which I wasn't going to do.
To add to that, there are a lot of different choices. So I was actually a teacher, and my husband was a teacher, and I chose to go back to law school and put myself through law school. It was a choice because I realized, wow, this is not going to work in San Francisco.
Exactly.
But it was a choice, but I just want to say that, you know, actually the German Department of Labor, my sister works for them, they did a study and they actually confirmed that it's a societal issue. It's not one individual making choices. We need to accept, you know, people for who they are. And what I do like about our discussion is that the money, the color green is gender blind to some extent, but we do have certain women issues, but I think we need to get beyond that.
Well, not to trivialize your comment, remember it was Hillary Clinton who said it takes a village?
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, you're absolutely right. There was someone in the back who was, go ahead.
Yes, I had a question for the speakers and also for the audience. I think one of the elements that are sort of weaving through all this, and also themed with the program, is women's ability to negotiate. And with that comes each of these various topics that we're surfacing. Could the speakers address to us their most difficult and most successful periods in their life of what they have to negotiate and what worked?
It was actually a question of mine. Thank you.
How did you do it?
And Axel, you could probably say in a way, you know, what women have you seen do negotiations well and why? So, I don't know, you want to start?
Yeah, there was actually an interesting case. It was my marketing manager. She was about 26, and she was very ambitious, and she had to run a large exhibition for us. And she made, in their negotiations, she made a major mistake. So we had to advertise a little bit in the exhibition handbook, and so it's about $100 per entry. And she just saw this list and thought, oh, this is cool. And she made all these crosses around the list, not knowing this, each one is $100. It was a $10,000 ticket. And she came to me basically in tears and said, so I made a major mistake, and I recognize that, and I'll take the responsibility, so I will quit. And I said, okay, Hermie, I just invested $10,000 in you. You are not going. You are helping us fix it. And so she said, okay. I mean, it was kind of really miserable. But she went back to the exhibition company and told her, you know, on the other side was also a lady, told her the story. And so they negotiated at least getting 50%. And I said, see, so you negotiated already 50% down, which you probably would never be able to do unless you had a real passion for getting the fixes done.
Or the water was up to here.
Exactly. And negotiation, I think, to your point, is probably one of the single most important things that, and I don't want to pick on women, what young entrepreneurs have to learn, being extremely demanding. And I have to tell you, through what I heard and listened to so far, all your problems except the kids, all entrepreneurs have. But women have a special, I wouldn't say it is an ability, but it's a special kind of thing, is taking everything that goes south very personal.
Yes.
Oh, that's my guilt. This is my fault. You're right. And if you can go over it, you won the game. Absolutely, because all these issues, working hard, doing this, being much harder, believe me, all of us have been through this. And for us, it may have been natural at the end, like 10 years or 20 years later, like today. But when I had to go through negotiation, I was sweating. I was like, oh God, I'm never going to do that. I had one big deal to negotiate. This was my biggest deal. And I was 26, and the other guys were 2 executives from Lufthansa. And this was a multi-million-dollar deal. And it literally sealed, either we stay in business or we're bankrupt after I walk out this door. So you can imagine how I felt. The only thing I didn't have is I couldn't pull the women flag saying, oh yeah, it's because I'm a woman. No. I mean, I had to go through this. And I only can ask you, stop the women thing. I mean, you have to. And one thing is, and you said earlier, Angelika, so it's there's no political correct issue here.
Feel free. Doesn't mean I won't shoot you down.
No.
Hey, you're just giving them all food.
We're talking so often about discrimination, particularly in black versus white. And one of our daughters dated a black guy. He's a very nice guy. We have friends who are black. So there's zero difference for us.
One of my best friends is black. That's fine.
So, but what we realized, and I also talked to him and said, Keith, you guys, black guys, you are the ones who are constantly discriminating. Because when you look on TV, you look through Facebook, it's almost always the black people who are arguing about black and white.
I don't know where you're going, but this is really a topic about women and entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
and
but
I don't want to go to the.
No.
Finish your thought,
but here's the connection. Ladies, you do it similar. You still pick on. Oh yeah, we women do that. Your mothers went through this whole area of women liberation. It was your mothers and your grandmothers. And I think we have to...
It was my generation.
And your generation, yeah.
It wasn't my mother, it was my generation.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I think this was...
I burned my bra in Berkeley, come on.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So this was a major achievement, but that was 30 years ago? And I think we all learned since then, don't we? Didn't we? I mean, we don't have to liberate women anymore.
But the question is, look who's saying that. Is a woman saying that? No, a man is saying that again.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Why is that the problem?
I think one of the things that I do a lot of mentoring of women, in particular CEOs, and I just tell them there is a certain level of distinction that's going to be made based on your gender. Okay, it's a fact, and I also tell them, given that fact, get over it and move on. And the reason for that is because you yourself become self-limiting. You yourself are going to either use that as a rationale for why you didn't get money, or you're going to say that it's because of that, when there is plenty of reasons why you don't get money. So it can be very self-limiting in that sense. Be aware that you have challenges, that you're going to have to work twice as hard to get half as far. It's just a given. So if you know that you're starting a race, not at the start line, but half a mile back, then that means that you are going to have to work that much harder, and you're going to have to be able to overcome. But the way to overcome is not to bemoan the fact that people are discriminating against you. That's already a given, okay? the way to get ahead is basically start speaking the language to the people that in fact are going to be making those decisions that impact you. So like for instance, you were talking about negotiation. You know, I was 27 when I came to the executive senior staff at Stanford University, okay? These are Nobel laureates, so these are academic community at a very prestigious college. I was the only woman, only young person, no gray hair. And I was, you know, I used to say things, and they would just sort of pat me on my head and say, well, you know, sure, you know. And that was something that I had to sort of, you know, kind of, not get used to, but had to figure out how to navigate and negotiate through that fact, okay? I promised them I was going to get older every day. And then I said, how do they make decisions? I asked myself, how do these scientists make decisions? Well, they focus on quantitative stuff. And so what I did was I became really good at statistical modeling so that I could demonstrate that there was discrimination in salary setting statistically, that it was not a outliner, it was an institutional problem. And so I started speaking to them in their language. And it was from there that I was able to get policy changes, by learning that language. As entrepreneurs, speaking to investors, men and women, and you know what? Women aren't all jewels, right? Right? How many women do you know have like made it and pulled the ladder up behind them, okay? So they're not all jewels either, right? So it's not, the fact that you are a woman doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get a break from another woman either, right? In fact, some women are worse, you know, because what they do is they represent your class, and then men just sort of go, oh yeah, see a woman saying that. So you know, but navigating and negotiating is a function of learning the language and then speaking in that language, so that the fact that you're a woman becomes muted, and your product or your exit or your ROI is going to speak for you. And then I think that's really the key.
Let me raise another issue. So when I got divorced, happily divorced, my husband and I were very good friends, but we shouldn't have been married. I was beginning 40s, and there was, I had a Ph.D., master's from Berkeley, all that, but I raised my children, and you know how many things one can do when one raises children. I couldn't get a job. I mean, it was impossible. My age, the housewife, all that. So of course I had to become self-employed. I mean, I had no other choice. But I also found this, so I really want to know, you know, what, I mean, you're all a lot younger. I don't think that many of you are 40 and older. I don't know.
Give me a break. Come on.
Okay. You're a lot younger.
Thank you.
So I found this great, there was an interview in Fortune with a couple of women. This one woman says she's over 40. So I want to know, what do we do about it? I love coding. I have a master's in computer science. I work in tech for 2 decades. So many women like me are so highly trained for what? It was hard enough being the only woman on most projects. Try being the only woman over 40. Doesn't matter how good you are, even your colleagues respect you, eventually you get tired of being the odd duck. I took all my experience, started my own thing where I could make the rules. I'm never going back. So TechCrunch founder Michael Arrington, he wrote a blog post called Internet Entrepreneurs Are Like Professional Athletes. They peak around 25. The average age of a founder at Y Combinator is 26. Do you think that's the correct age? Are most entrepreneurs that age or successful? What's your opinion? No. The Kauffman Foundation that surveyed 500 successful high-growth founders found the typical successful founder was 40 years old with at least 6 to 10 years of industry experience. Twice as many successful entrepreneurs are over 50 in comparison to entrepreneurs under 25. So the question is, what do you do in Silicon Valley if you're over 40 and want a startup and want a job? And how do we change? Then there's definitely ageism. I mean, that is odd. I know, and I know others do. So what does one do?
Just go for it. You know, I'm really old. Yeah, I'm really old, and I have 4 kids. But I think, you know, take it out of our mind how old we are. Take it out of my mind. If I'm a woman, I cannot be perfect, yeah, but I do what I want.
And Marita, there are startup guys. I won't quote my son. who said something, I would never employ anyone over 40. Absolutely not. They don't know it. They don't, I mean, how could I raise a child like this? But, you know, I wouldn't, they're not modern, they're not up to date. I mean, you did a better job, Shirley. You know, I mean, and that's the attitude of these, you know, young, God knows what, where they think their generation knows everything and we know nothing. How do we change that? Because he's not going to give a job to someone who's older.
You can't change it at all. Like you said, I mean, go over it.
Yeah, you can't get over it if you're looking for a job.
The question is,
Right?
is that one example or is it?
I think you're right.
Sorry?
I think you have
Okay,
to
I know it's
acknowledge
one example. It's not the only example that I've seen of men saying that, or younger men saying that they wouldn't employ older. Why do people that are over 40 and 50 take so long to find new jobs, even though they're qualified?
Because they're probably not
I think the
qualified.
problem is real, and I think we have to acknowledge it, you know, but it's not going to stop me ever. Like, I'm not going to do this, you know. I mean, I have 80-year-old friends, and they look like teenagers, you know. Not because they look like this, but mostly because they behave like this. And it's really just like to keep an interest. Like, I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, my kids they're listening to this crazy music, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. I don't want to know either. And I still ask them, it's like, what is it what you're listening to? What's this band called? You know, what do they do? You know, just to keep that interest so I can have a conversation with them and they feel like they understand.
You're relatable.
You know, so, yeah.
I think
That doesn't make you employable.
No, but however, they want to have a culture of people that they can relate to.
Good point.
And so if you walk in there, they might be like, oh, here comes my mom to tell me what to do.
Exactly.
Rather than,
That's
here's
what it
my
is.
friend who I can maybe negotiate with, have a beer, listen to music, etc.
Good point.
So I think that's the general mentality. Now, the one thing I will say is, having worked with 25-year-old men who have built the initial set, they realized that they could not scale the business and that they needed to bring in C-level people who were 40, 50, etc. And so, fortunately, if you go the investor angle, or even if you don't, there will come a time where you realize you do need some people with either gray hair or whatever sitting at the table who can help you navigate through some experiences that you aren't familiar with. So a lot of that, though, comes down to being able to sell yourself. And I think, based on my own parents, my parents are now, my mom's in her late 50s, my dad's in his early 60s, and they both work in Silicon Valley, and they moved here very recently. I think my mom had, it took her a year to get a job, and a lot of it was, I would tell her, you are not asking for enough money. And she was like, oh, but I don't want to ask for too much because I want the job. And I was like, they're not going to take you seriously if you ask for this much. Like, she was asking for half of market rate because she thought if she just lowballed them that they would go with her. But they thought she wasn't qualified because of it. And then slowly I was like, just ask for like $5 more next time, and 10, and 20, you know? And I just kind of had to coach my mom. And so finally now she's...
What did she end up getting?
She's an accountant. She's managing like the new Marriott's in Palo Alto. Like they're, yeah, so she's helping the accounting department there. And my dad's an electrical engineer, and he also struggled with some negotiation. He was like, I can't ask for more than this. And I was like, you know, Nurent, my brother and I, we make way more than that. And then he was like, oh, I've been doing this for 30 years. And I was like, yeah, so maybe you should make like our combined salary. But I think part of it was like also understanding your worth, right? And I think a lot of times older people feel like they're just older and they're not.
Watch it.
Right. They don't want it. The point is, I think that they feel like they don't have anything to bring to the table rather than leveraging their experience and explaining how they can help the companies. They don't always have to be 100% relevant, right? Like, sales is sales. If you can close a customer, you can close a customer. If you can write code, you can write code. Like, the fundamentals don't change. And I think some of it is also finding the cultures where people are going to be open to hearing that.
So Rose is in search. She does search.
But in
so.
the downturn,
you
know, when a lot of people were getting laid off, the older people were
probably have to
getting
talk
laid
a little
off.
louder for the back. Sorry.
Because they're making too much money. So companies wanted to hire the younger people where they didn't have to pay them so much. And where you can get 2 or 3 people for one old person who's making a lot of money. So that's...
One of the things they are discovering though, from that whole recession where they did what they call, you know, that bloodbath where they let all of those people go because they were trying to reduce the, you know, the burn rate, is that the people that they were left with, yeah, they were young, and yes, they could get somebody, but they were like burning them out, okay?
And they realized
they were burning them. They're starting to realize that, and how they realize, because they're transient. young people, I mean, you know, in my generation, you stayed for 5 years. It's just almost as a matter of loyalty to your employer, right? So that you can have some continuity and you can have some, what I call corporate history, you know, and institutional memory. But the young people that are coming in, like my sons, they're transient. It's like, you know, they'll go to the next job opportunity, they'll stay for maybe 18 months to 2 years at the most, and then they're going to move. That creates a lot of instability in corporations, and the corporations are starting to pick up on that. And so, and I think, you know, when you are older, it's your responsibility to stay relevant. Okay? So if you are going into, you know, the job market, it's important for you to understand even something as simple as pop culture, what's going on around you, or what's going on in the world around you, or that you actually are reading a newspaper from time to time. You know, that you are relevant. I mean, a lot of times, you know, you have to be able to not just sell yourself, but, you know, I always say don't sell yourself. Present the employer an opportunity to have you, an opportunity. And you have to be able to figure out what is your value added to the corporation. You have to figure that out, okay? Now, you know, a lot of times, you know, when I speak to employers, I don't apply for jobs at employers. I go and sit on their board, okay? Because I figure I could do a lot more damage there. But usually, you know, when people, you know, get into this sort of, not an age thing, they do it sort of kind of through a back door. They say, well, how long and what kind of a commitment can you make? And I always laugh, and I said, if you're trying to figure out how old I am, I can tell you that I'm old enough to know better and young enough to do it again. So if you are lucky enough to have me even for 2 years, I can make a significant contribution to your organization, and that's what you want, somebody who can make a significant contribution. But it's your job to figure out what is that value added. And the one way you do that is take the time to read the annual report that the corporations put out. They will tell you where they've been and where they're going. And what you do is you align yourself to that annual report that says, we're going to be in life science this year. This is where our money is going to be spent. This is where our emphasis is going to be. And you just align yourself there and say, this is the value add I bring, because you're going in the direction that they're going. And I think that's something that, you know,
Really
you can
good
actually
advice.
do.
It's very good advice. The gentleman over there wanted to say something.
I thought you know me.
I do. Go ahead. I don't know what you're going to say, even though I know you.
No, you don't know me.
No.
Anyway, I want to share a little bit about myself with you, because earlier the subject was about discrimination of women. So I and my parents are immigrants from China. And when I first came to the United States, I worked in my father's Chinese laundry in a little town called Ph.D. So nobody in town called me Tom. They always called me the Chinese laundry boy. So my father told me, forget about college, forget about working in white men's environment, because you will fail. Stay in the Chinese laundry business. But I never agreed with my father. So I went on to Berkeley and studied computers and worked at IBM, a number of companies in various levels of engineering management. So one day I got a job as an engineering director. The company was started by a number of ex-IBMers. So the company was organized pretty much like IBM type style. And 2 weeks into the job, my executive secretary, that job I managed for 115 people in an engineering organization, about $3.5 million budget. So 2 weeks into the job, my secretary came to my office and closed the door. She says, Tom, I have something to tell you. I said, okay. She says, I think you're going to make it.
Oh my God.
And the reason I'm standing up is, this is significant. I said, well, why did you think I was going to make it? She says, when I met you, I felt you were not going to last, because you have 2 serious handicaps. You're very short, and you're Asian. And she said, I've never seen a short executive be successful in terms of her work. And she was older than me, and she was also taller than me.
Right.
And she said, I have never seen an Asian succeed in management. But she says, in the 2 weeks that I've worked for you, I noticed you don't act short, and you don't act Chinese.
Whatever that meant. Right?
So my point is, I don't act and think like my father. who believed that he was the Chinese laundry man, and that's
What he said.
that's where he should be. I never believed that. And I also have a little bit of opinion about women and men entrepreneurs. So over the last 12 years, I've advised quite a few hundred high-tech entrepreneurs, mostly CEOs of startup companies. And what I've noticed, and this is not to be negative about women, but this is something to think about. I've seen several women, one with a Ph.D. who was a high-tech person at Cisco. A couple of them had master's degree in computer science. And what happened was with some of these women was, all of a sudden one day in their life they decided to quit their corporate jobs and be an entrepreneur with a startup. But the startup had nothing related to their education or the work experience. So several years have passed and these women are still struggling. So the thing is, because like one was a PhD, and one day she decided, because there's 2 little kids, so she wanted to have a business that's geared to little kids. But she had no experience, no background. So it's very hard for her to succeed. And then there were a couple with masters in computer science. And again, they decided to go into something totally different. So one decided to go into coaching people about relationships. But she herself has never been married. So people wonder about her qualifications. So my advice is that if you want to be an entrepreneur,